There is a type of woman you meet and never forget. Not because she is the most beautiful in the room, the wealthiest in the group, or the most successful at the company. But because of something else, something society doesn't teach us how to name. She competes with no one. She compares herself to no one. She needs to prove herself to no one. And somehow, everyone wants to be near her. Everyone feels seen when they speak with her. Doesn't this go against everything modern life has taught us? That to succeed, one must compete? To be loved, one must prove oneself? To have value, one must be better than someone else? Carl Jung, a man who dedicated his life to deciphering the mysteries of the human psyche, discovered what 99% of women have never been told: true power comes not from winning, but from refusing to play the game. This is the choice of one who knows her place. The difference between I cannot compete and I do not need to compete is the difference between weakness and complete self-possession. Are you wasting decades of your life chasing things that, deep down, you know will never truly satisfy you? In the next 10 minutes, you will understand what many take a lifetime to realize. 1. The need for nothing to prove. Observing life over many years, I've noticed a surprising phenomenon: the most powerful women never declare their power. They don't flaunt their degrees, recount their achievements, or compare themselves to anyone. Yet, everyone feels a distinct magnetic field around them. Jung spent nearly half a century decoding this mystery. He discovered that when a person stops needing to prove themselves, a fundamental energy shift occurs. All the energy once used to maintain an image, to persuade others, to defend the ego is suddenly liberated and transformed into an irresistible presence. In depth psychology, there is a concept called libido. Jung understood this not merely as sexual energy, as Freud thought, but as the entirety of a person's life force. When this energy is not leaked through futile attempts at self-validation, it accumulates and creates a unique energetic density. Think of the difference between scattered light and a laser beam. Both are light, but a laser can cut through steel because all its photons travel in the same direction, at the same frequency. Similarly, when a person does not scatter their energy on proving themselves, their entire being is focused on the simple act of existing. From a neurological perspective, the brains of these individuals operate in a completely different state. Instead of the constantly stressed sympathetic nervous system always ready for fight or flight, they live in a state of the parasympathetic nervous system. This state not only helps them feel at peace but also creates a field of safety around them. When you are near such a person, your nervous system automatically recognizes, there is no threat here. Your reptilian brain, the primitive part always scanning for danger, is signaled that it can relax. As a result, you feel comfortable, accepted, and able to let out a sigh and release your own social armor. But this power comes with a profound realization. Women who don't need to prove themselves are often those who have endured the deepest internal crises. They have passed through what Jung called the dark night of the soul, a period when everything they believed about themselves collapsed. In that void, they learned an invaluable lesson: their worth is not dependent on whether someone else sees it. Miraculously, when they stop trying to be seen, they become effortlessly visible. When they stop trying to impress, they leave an indelible impression. When they stop performing, their authentic self finally has a chance to shine. Jung called this the process of individuation. The woman who needs nothing to prove has completed a crucial stage of this journey. She has separated who she is from what she does. Her identity is no longer tied to her achievements, her social roles, or the opinions of others. The end result is a kind of freedom most people can only dream of. Freedom from the need for validation, freedom from the anxiety of acceptance, freedom from the exhaustion of constantly being on and waiting to prove something. In that freedom, they find a power that can never be taken away because it does not come from the outside. These women become lighthouses in the storm of life. They don't need to shout to be noticed, nor display to be remembered. Their presence speaks for itself. And in a world filled with noise and artifice, that authenticity becomes an undeniable source of attraction. 2. The power of enough in a world of more, the ability to say this is enough becomes a rare superpower. To understand this power, we must delve into the psychology of desire. Jung discovered that most human desire is not for the object they think they want, but for something deeper and more fundamental. When a person constantly wants more money, they are actually seeking security. When they want more recognition, they are truly craving to be seen and valued. When they want more achievements, they are trying to prove their own worth. Women who know enough have cracked this code. They realize that chasing external objects will never satisfy the underlying need. Instead, they go directly to the source. Need security? They build it from within through self-reliance and emotional regulation skills. Need to be seen? They learn to truly see and accept themselves. Need to prove their worth? They discover that worth is inherent, not earned. Neuroscience fascinatingly supports this discovery. Brain scans show that people with high satisfaction levels have different activity patterns in their reward systems. Instead of dopamine spikes from external achievements which fade quickly and leave one craving more, they have a sustainable level of serotonin, the neurotransmitter of happiness and contentment. But here is what most self-help books won't tell you: achieving contentment isn't about having fewer desires. It's about having a different kind of desire. These women still have dreams, goals, and ambitions. However, their motivation has fundamentally shifted from one based on scarcity to one based on abundance. Scarcity-based motivation sounds like, I must achieve this to prove I'm good enough. I need more success so people will respect me. If I don't win, I'll be a nobody. Abundance-based motivation has a completely different tone. I want to create this because it brings me joy. I pursue this because it aligns with my values. I grow because growth itself is beautiful. Jung understood that this shift doesn't happen overnight. It often follows experiences he called an encounter with the self, moments when one glimpses their true nature beyond social conditioning. Sometimes it happens through trauma, sometimes through deep contemplation, sometimes through unexpected moments of grace. When this transformation occurs, the entire relationship with success is altered. Success becomes a byproduct of authentic expression rather than the goal itself. Achievement becomes a way to serve a larger purpose rather than a way to validate the ego. Competition becomes irrelevant because they are no longer playing the same game as everyone else. The enough mindset breaks the cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction that keeps most people trapped. When you always need more to feel okay, you never truly arrive. You are always postponing happiness, always deferring contentment until the next achievement. Women who know enough live fully in the present moment. They allow themselves to enjoy what they have while continuing to grow and contribute. This is not complacency, it is the foundation of true ambition. Ambition rooted in love instead of fear. The effect in relationships is astonishing. When you don't need more from others, more attention, more validation, more anything, you can meet them as true equals. You can appreciate them for who they are rather than what they can give you. You can genuinely celebrate their successes because their success does not threaten your sense of fullness. Jung's ultimate insight into enough is revolutionary. Those who know enough often end up with more. Not because they chase it, but because they have freed up a vast amount of mental and emotional energy to focus on what truly matters. Their work becomes more creative, their relationships more authentic, and their contributions more meaningful. The universe seems to reward those who stop making demands on it. 3. The power of stillness. There is an ancient proverb from Lao Tzu: he who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. Jung deeply understood this wisdom and applied it to his understanding of feminine power. In a culture of constant noise and performance, the ability to be still becomes a revolutionary act. But the stillness Jung studied is not passive inactivity. It is a dynamic presence, a presence that contains immense energy but has no need to discharge it through action or words. Think of the difference between a rushing river and a deep lake. The river makes a lot of noise, is constantly churning, and appears very active. The lake appears still, but in its depths lies immense power. Women who have mastered stillness understand this secret. In a world where everyone is broadcasting, the one who receives becomes the most interesting. In a culture of speakers, the one who listens becomes the most sought after. In a society of performers, the audience becomes the most powerful. From a neurological perspective, stillness requires sophisticated brain function. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, must be strong enough to override the amygdala's constant urge to react. Most people live in a state of reaction, constantly responding to the stimuli around them. The brain of a still person operates differently. It chooses when and how to respond instead of automatically reacting. Stillness creates what Jung called a temenos, or a sacred space. The ancient Greeks used this term to describe the precincts of a temple, a space set apart for divine encounters. When a woman embodies stillness, she becomes a mobile sacred space. People feel they can bring their true selves into her presence without fear of judgment or competition. A deeper layer of stillness connects to Jung's concept of active imagination. In a state of stillness, the boundary between the conscious and unconscious mind becomes more permeable. Insights emerge spontaneously, creative solutions appear, and intuitive understanding arises. This is why many breakthroughs come in moments of quiet, on a walk, in the shower, during meditation rather than during intense thought. Still women become natural healers not because they do anything special, but because their presence activates the healing mechanisms in others. In a frantic world, the nervous system craves stillness like a parched earth craves rain. When people encounter true stillness, something within them recognizes it as a precious resource and is drawn to it. Jung observed that stillness has a ripple effect. One still person in a group changes the entire dynamic. Conversations become deeper, people listen more carefully, and drama significantly decreases. Stillness creates the space for others to slow down, breathe, and remember who they are beneath their social masks. However, achieving true stillness requires facing what most people spend their lives avoiding, themselves. In the silence, all the noise of the external world fades, and you are left with whatever is in your inner world. Anxieties surface, fears emerge, and uncomfortable truths reveal themselves. Most people instinctively turn away from this encounter, preferring the comfortable distraction of busyness. Women who master stillness have learned to sit with this discomfort without immediately trying to fix, change, or escape it. They understand that discomfort is often information, not an emergency. Anxiety can be a signal to slow down. Sadness can be an invitation to grieve something that needs to be grieved. Anger can be a sign that a boundary needs attention. Spiritual traditions across cultures recognize stillness as the path to wisdom. Jung was fascinated by Eastern concepts like wu-wei, effortless action that arises from deep stillness. When a woman operates from this place, her actions carry an unusual effectiveness because they are aligned with the natural flow of things rather than forcing against it. The social impact of stillness extends far beyond the individual. Still women become anchors in their families, communities, and workplaces. They provide a stability that others unconsciously rely on. In crisis situations, people naturally turn to them not because they have the answers, but because their presence creates a space where answers can emerge. Jung's final insight is this: stillness is not the absence of power, but power in its most refined form. Like a diamond formed under pressure, true stillness emerges from having faced and integrated all the chaos within oneself. When a woman achieves this integration, she radiates a peace the world desperately needs. For saying no, the ability to say no clearly and without guilt marks a significant milestone in a woman's journey to maturity. Jung understood this not merely as an act of refusal, but as an expression of a profound inner revolution. In society, women are often raised to be agreeable, accommodating, and self-sacrificing. These messages create a large shadow in the psyche. All the energies of self-protection, refusal of what is unsuitable, and even necessary selfishness are pushed into the unconscious. The result is that many women do not know how to set boundaries without feeling guilty. They say yes to everything out of a fear of being disliked, a need to be loved, or a misguided belief that their value lies in serving others. This leads to burnout, simmering resentment, and a disconnection from their true selves. Jung called the process of embracing these unnice parts of oneself integrating the shadow. For women, learning to say no is a form of this integration. They must confront the truth that they have the right to refuse, the right to prioritize themselves, and the right to not please everyone. This process often begins with anger, an emotion many women have been taught to avoid. This anger is not something to be ashamed of, it is a signal that boundaries have been violated for too long. It is the voice of the soul reclaiming its autonomy. From a neurological perspective, the ability to say no is directly linked to the development of the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for impulse control and conscious decision-making. When this area is strong, we can override automatic social programming and make choices based on our true values. Women who have mastered the art of saying no have a common trait: they do not over-explain. Their no is clear, kind, but firm. They don't need to make excuses, apologize for having boundaries, or offer a list of reasons why they cannot do something. This clarity has a strange effect. When someone can say no with ease, their yes becomes exponentially more valuable. People know that when they agree to something, it comes from a genuine choice, not from social pressure or guilt. Jung realized that the ability to refuse is also the ability to conserve energy. Instead of letting their energy leak into unsuitable commitments, toxic relationships, or meaningless activities, they can focus their full power on what truly matters. In relationships, clear boundaries create mutual respect instead of resentment. When people know where they stand and don't have to guess or test the limits of others, conflict and misunderstanding are significantly reduced. Notably, these women do not say no from a place of anger or defensiveness. They speak from a centered place, from a clear understanding of what is and is not aligned with their lives. This kind of no does not create enemies, it creates respect. Ultimately, learning to say no opens up the possibility of a wholehearted yes. When you know you can refuse anything that isn't right for you, your agreement becomes more meaningful. You can commit fully because you have chosen consciously. 5. Self-acceptance. Jung famously said, "I would rather be whole than good." This captures the essence of self-acceptance. It is not about becoming perfect, but about embracing all of who we are, including the ungraceful parts. Self-acceptance at a deep level requires an internal revolution. It means stopping the war against the aspects of yourself that society has labeled as bad or unacceptable. Instead, it is about integrating these parts into a complete, whole self. From a psychological perspective, self-acceptance activates the parasympathetic nervous system and releases oxytocin, the hormone of connection and love. Conversely, constant self-criticism activates the sympathetic nervous system and increases cortisol, the stress hormone. Over the long term, this difference has a massive impact on psychophysical health. A crucial aspect of self-acceptance is the withdrawal of projections. When we don't accept certain parts of ourselves, we often project those parts onto others, seeing in them what we refuse to see in ourselves. When we fully accept ourselves, this stops, and we can see others more objectively. Surprisingly, self-acceptance does not mean an end to growth. On the contrary, it creates the solid foundation upon which true growth can occur. When energy is no longer wasted fighting oneself, that energy can be used for creativity and expansion. In relationships, a person who fully accepts themselves becomes irresistible in a very special way. They don't need others to feel complete, so they can love and give from a state of abundance rather than lack. This is the kind of love everyone craves most, unconditional and without a hidden agenda. Socially, those who fully accept themselves often become permission givers. They make it okay for others to be themselves too. Their presence creates a safe space where others can drop their masks and show their true selves. Ultimately, self-acceptance is the foundation of authentic leadership. When someone doesn't need to hide or compensate for anything, they can lead from a place of truth and trustworthiness. They are not governed by the fear of being found out because they have already acknowledged everything about themselves. The process of self-acceptance often begins with seeing flaws not as things to be fixed, but as natural parts of being human. A person can be irritable at times but also deeply sincere. A person can be overly sensitive but also have an immense capacity for love. This integration creates a whole person rather than a fake perfect version. 6. Learning from pain. The ability to transform pain into wisdom is one of the most sublime expressions of psychological maturity. Jung called this process alchemy, the turning of lead into gold, but on a spiritual level. When most people experience pain, the natural reaction is to avoid, deny, or try to forget it as quickly as possible. The non-competitive woman has learned to do the opposite. She goes deeply into her pain, not to wallow in it, but to understand and extract wisdom from it. This has a solid neurological basis. When we experience trauma or pain and process it in a healthy way, the brain creates new connections, a phenomenon known as post-traumatic growth. The brain regions responsible for empathy, wisdom, and emotional regulation are actually strengthened through this process. Jung described this as a process of dissolution and reintegration. Pain dissolves old psychological structures, belief systems, and worldviews that no longer serve us. Then, from these fragments, a new, wiser structure is formed. The key is how they relate to the pain. Instead of seeing themselves as victims, they see themselves as students. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they ask, "What is this here to teach me?" This shift in perspective completely transforms their experience. Those who have learned from their pain in a healthy way often become wounded healers, an archetype Jung was very fond of. They have a unique ability to understand and support others going through similar difficulties, not from a place of theory, but from lived experience. There is a special quality to these individuals. They can sit with pain without needing to fix or change it. In a world obsessed with positive thinking and quick fixes, the ability to simply be present with suffering one's own and that of others becomes a rare gift. This creates a very special kind of compassion, not pity or condescending sympathy, but genuine empathy born from a shared humanity. They know that suffering is part of the human experience, not something to be ashamed of or hidden. Finally, learning from pain creates an unshakable resilience. They know they have survived the worst and not only survived but grown from it. This gives them the confidence to face whatever life brings. Wisdom from pain is not the same as knowledge from books. It is a deep, embodied understanding that can only come from having walked through fire and emerged stronger. That is why these women often become natural mentors to others, not because they have all the answers, but because they have a presence that can hold anything. 7. Giving without expecting return. The ability to love and give without expecting anything in return is perhaps the most refined expression of psychological maturity. Jung understood this not as sacrifice or self-denial, but as the expression of love in its purest form, love as a creative force rather than a need. Most of the love we know is conditional love. I love you because you make me feel good, because you meet my needs, because you behave the way I want. This type of love, while natural, is inherently transactional and creates expectations. Jung distinguished between eros love as desire and need and agape love as unconditional giving. Agape comes not from lack, but from abundance. It does not seek to fill a void in oneself but overflows from an inner fullness. Women who can give without expecting return have undergone a fundamental transformation in how they relate to love. They have shifted from "I love to be loved" to "I love because loving is my nature." This shift creates an extraordinary freedom from the need to control the outcome of love. From a neurological perspective, the act of unconditional giving activates the oxytocin system in the brain, creating feelings of connection and well-being. Notably, the giver often receives more mental health benefits than the receiver. This is not the reason to give, but it is evidence that humans are wired for connection and service. This kind of love has a profoundly healing quality. When someone loves you without expecting anything back, It touches a part of you that is rarely touched, the part that believes you are worthy of love simply for existing. This can heal old wounds of self-worth and open up the capacity to love others in the same way. In practice, unconditional love does not mean an absence of boundaries. These women can still say no, still walk away from toxic relationships, and still protect themselves. But they do so from a place of love, loving themselves and the other person enough not to allow harmful behavior to continue. The magic of unconditional love is its ability to transform others. When someone feels completely loved, not for what they do but for who they are, they often naturally want to become the best version of themselves. Not from pressure, but from inspiration. Ultimately, the ability to give without expecting return frees both the giver and the receiver from the trap of emotional debt. No one owes anyone anything, no one has to feel guilty for not being able to reciprocate. This creates the space for true love to blossom free, natural, and unforced. 8. Living from the heart. The ability to live according to an inner calling rather than external pressures is the mark of a person who has completed the journey of self-discovery. Jung called this following one's vocation, living according to one's deepest purpose instead of societal expectations. In the modern world, we are besieged by the noise of others' opinions, family expectations, peer pressure, and social norms. Amidst all this noise, the small, quiet voice of the soul, what Jung called the self, is often buried. Women who live from the heart have learned to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of wisdom, between the voice of the ego and the voice of the self. They develop what psychologists call interoceptive awareness, the ability to hear and trust the signals from within their own bodies and souls. This process requires extraordinary courage. Because living from the heart often means going against what is normal or safe. It might mean leaving a stable job to pursue a passion, ending a relationship that is no longer aligned, or making decisions that others don't understand. Jung understood that each person has a unique personal myth, a blueprint for their life written in their psychological DNA. When we live in accordance with this myth, life feels meaningful and energized. When we live against it, we feel exhausted and empty. From a neurological perspective, when we act in alignment with our deepest values and purpose, the brain naturally releases chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. This creates a sustainable sense of fulfillment that is completely different from the temporary pleasure of meeting external expectations. Living from the heart does not mean being selfish or uncaring toward others. On the contrary, when someone lives authentically, they have more to give. They don't need to draw energy from others to maintain a false version of themselves. These women often become natural sources of inspiration for others, not because they try to be inspiring, but because seeing someone live authentically activates a similar longing in the hearts of others. They become living examples that another way is possible. The process of learning to trust one's intuition often begins with small decisions. Choosing a restaurant based on a feeling rather than online reviews. Choosing friends based on a genuine connection rather than social gain. Slowly, the muscle of trusting the inner voice is strengthened. Ultimately, living from the heart creates a freedom that can never be taken away. Because when your decisions come from within, you are not dependent on the approval or disapproval of others. You become the author of your own life instead of an actor in someone else's script. 9. Illuminating others. The ability to help others see and realize their own best potential is the pinnacle of psychological development. Jung believed this was not a skill that could be learned, but the natural result of having completed one's own journey of individuation. When a person has found and integrated all aspects of themselves, both positive and negative, they develop the ability to see the whole person in others. They don't just see the problems or flaws, they also see the untapped potential. This isn't about paying compliments or ignoring real issues. Instead, it's about the ability to hold both realities at once, seeing someone for who they are now, and also for who they could become. This kind of vision has transformative power. Jung called this phenomenon the transcendent function, the ability to hold and reconcile opposites. When applied to relationships, it means being able to love someone completely while still seeing clearly where they need to grow. Women who have this ability to illuminate others often become natural mirrors. Not a mirror that reflects what is, but a mirror that reflects what could be. When someone is in their presence, they begin to see themselves through eyes of love and possibility. The magic is that this process is effortless. They don't try to fix anyone. Instead, their very presence creates an energetic field where others naturally want to grow. Just as a flower turns toward the sun, people turn toward those who see the best in them. From a psychological perspective, when someone feels seen and valued for their potential, they tend to grow in that direction. This is known as the Pygmalion effect. Positive expectations can become self-fulfilling prophecies. These women don't just illuminate individuals, they illuminate the entire spaces around them. Families become warmer, workplaces more creative, and communities more connected. They become catalysts for collective growth. Crucially, they do this not from a superior position or with the intent to save someone. They do it from the recognition that we all have a light within us, and sometimes we just need someone to remind us it's there. Jung understood that when a person has found their own light, they naturally want to help others find theirs. Not out of duty, but out of joy. Because light is never diminished by being shared, it only grows brighter. Ultimately, the ability to illuminate others creates a legacy that extends beyond one's individual life. The people they touch will go on to touch others, creating a chain of light that ripples through generations. This is how a non-competitive woman can change the world, not by winning against someone, but by helping everyone win against themselves. In a world where power is often measured in decibels and dollars, the non-competitive woman brings a revolutionary message: true strength doesn't have to be loud. They demonstrate that you can be powerful without being aggressive, confident without being arrogant, and successful without stepping on anyone. They are living proof that another way is possible. Jung understood long ago that the evolution of human consciousness happens not through competition, but through integration. These women are the pioneers of that evolution. They are showing us the future of feminine power. In these 9 sources of strength, we find a map to a different way of living. A way where worth doesn't need to be proven, happiness doesn't need to be chased, and love doesn't need to be earned. Because it is all already inside, waiting to be discovered. This is not about becoming someone else, but about returning to yourself. Not about having more, but about realizing what is already there. Not about winning the game, but about finding your own game to play. Every woman reading these words carries within her the potential for all 9 of these powers. They are not privileges reserved for a chosen few, but the birthright of every woman who is ready to go inside and meet herself. This revolution begins in silence, in the heart of each individual. It spreads not through loud declarations but through quiet presence. It changes the world not by fighting the darkness, but by turning on the light. Jung once said, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When a woman lives by these 9 powers, everyone she comes into contact with is touched and changed. Not through persuasion or force, but through the authenticity of her presence. This is your invitation: stop competing. Start being. Stop proving. Start living. Stop chasing. Start attracting. The world does not need another woman trying to be like everyone else. The world needs you, your authentic, non-competitive, quietly powerful self. The quiet revolution has begun. The only question left is, are you ready to join? The non-competitive women are changing the world, one heart at a time. They are proving that true power doesn't have to be loud. And in their silence, the entire world is learning to listen. If this video made your heart resonate, if you recognized yourself in these lines, then this is the sign you have been waiting for. Fire like immediately if you believe that true strength comes from within, not from defeating others. Every like is a vote for this quiet revolution. Dizzy, share this video now with the women you love. This might be exactly what they need to realize they don't have to compete with anyone, they just need to come home to themselves. Your share could change someone's life. Direct hit subscribe to the Love and Psyche channel now to not miss the next deep insights into psychology and love. We are committed to bringing you high quality, non-cliché content that helps you understand yourself and your relationships more deeply. This is not an ordinary call to action. This is an invitation to join a community of women who are choosing a different path, the path of authenticity, of quiet strength, of non-competitive love. High voltage comment and share, which of these 9 sources of power made you feel the most seen? Your story could become a source of inspiration for hundreds of other women. Remember, every time you like, share, and subscribe, you are not just supporting content, you are helping to spread a vital message. That women do not need to compete against each other. That true power comes from mutual support. That we are stronger when we are united. Bell turn on notifications to be the first to receive the latest insights from Love and Psyche. Because this revolution has only just begun, and you deserve to be at the forefront. Don't just read and leave. Take action. Become a part of the change you want to see in the world.